So this committee tries very hard all the time to do the right thing. So in other words, we are not going to butcher you over a legislative outcome. Right, so I just want to make that clear, that we recognize, and the job of Parliament is to amend legislation when necessary, or to ask the executive to engage in certain processes that solve the problem. So it's clear, and Deputy Minister, I think you said so, that the revenue stream of the Road Accident Fund needs to be resolved. There are other policy issues as well that may be necessary, and I don't want us to, so I'm just offering this now so that, you know, as the committee members ask questions and I ask questions, because I've got quite a few myself, you all understand that, at least from the chair's perspective, we recognize a fundamental problem. The second issue has to do with the manner in which the state's responsibility is recognized in financial terms. It arises with medical legal claims. Do we pay you a lump sum now, thinking that you are going to live for 100 years, or do we take care of you on an ongoing basis, and some of that happens in the state system and that kind of thing? And that there are some links between the two, at least systematically, because it might also be that some of your claimants, all the state needs to do is to accept responsibility for their care in state institutions. We don't need to pay them cash, as an example. So I'm just saying that we recognize the legislative and policy issues in play, so that it does not come across that the committee does not recognize that there are those issues in play. That said, one of the reasons we asked, and we're referring to the same thing that you traversed, Mr. Litswalo, which is a matter in litigation. So what happened is that the Auditor General gave us a view, and the reason that question was asked was to also give you a chance to ventilate it for the committee to understand, so that as we assess what position to take on the issue, we've heard from the AG and we've heard from you. So the first thing I'm going to do, and we did the same with the Auditor General, is I'm going to describe the problem in summary, just to make sure that we're on the same page, and you then tell me whether that's accurate or not, and then we'll go to the issues in dispute. So that's one aspect that we're going to deal with. The second is, it relates to some points that are not explicitly covered in the presentation, which is the outstanding claims, the backlog, and the impacts thereon into the system, including the court backlog that we have. So there's that issue. There are other financial issues in the financial statements, and then we'll deal with the vetting of executives. And finally, what we will do then, we'll be in a position after that conversation to start saying what our next conversation looks like, so that there's certainty in that respect as well. So let me describe the problem. So the first thing I will make, and it's got to do with how you framed it. The dispute is whether the Road Accident Fund is a social benefit scheme or an insurance-like product. Is that true? Because an insurance pays you now, and we give you your money and off you go. We don't pay you over time, right? But anyway, at the heart of the dispute, which is then reflected in the accounting treatment that is applied in the recognition of claims, is whether this is a social benefit scheme or it is an insurance-like a system. Would that be accurate?
Yes, Chair.
It would be.
Whether we are a social benefit,
yes,
and whether we are an insurer. Because insurance like does not exist, Chair,
okay.
In literature. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm saying insurance like in the sense that we don't pay you premiums, but for all intents and purposes, you are an insurer.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So that's step one, and I'm hoping we can then work together in the rest. That means the dispute between yourselves and the AG is at which point you recognize the claim in accounting terms such that you make provisions right, in your financial statements for those claims. So what you are saying is that it needs to be a validated claim first, and then we'll enter it in our books. If it's not, then we don't recognize it and we don't reflect it in our books. Would that be correct?
Indeed, Chair, but I think one of the issues must be canvassed very clearly. Once you say insurance or social benefit, then there is a standard. I think we must start there, because you see, if we move past that, we would have missed the opportunity of understanding what the crux is. Because if there was...
I'm getting there.
Okay, sure.
I am getting there. I'm just... so I said I'll ask a few stupid questions. Okay. So that's the second part of it. And I'm not wanting us to replicate the work of the courts here. It's just for the public's understanding and everybody's. Then there are accounting standards adopted by both our government, the Accounting Standards Board, and the Auditor General that determine what accounting treatment must be given depending on what your view of the scheme is. Do you think it's an insurer, or do you think it's a social benefit scheme? Would that be correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Final point. So this dispute has gone through the courts. How has that litigation gone so far? How have the courts decided?
The courts have said that we are an insurer. At least the North Gauteng High Court, Chair. On this matter, on us versus the AG, they said we are an insurer.
So in other words, they've agreed with the Auditor General.
Yes.
Was the matter not before the Supreme Court of Appeal at some point?
Yeah, Chair, we have taken the matter on review for obvious reasons, because we don't think that that is the case. And it is in front of the SCA, and we have now asked for reconsideration by the President of the SCA, because they did not look at the matter. They told us that we did not meet the requirements of a special appeal. That's what they said. So we have asked for reconsideration of that.
Apologies, Chair. I would regret for us to continue on something which may be factually not correct. The AG does not set a standard, because in the question you asked previously, you listed. So I just thought, for the purposes of checks and balance, that we do not draw the AG into being a referee and a player. They audit against the standard. Thanks.
Okay, so I think I should have framed that correctly. So the AG audits against what the ASB has set out, and I need you to correct me. The ASB is the Accounting Standards Board. There would then be guidance from National Treasury. Am I correct? In terms of how these things are, so there are two, right? So the AG then assesses your finances relative to the two. AG, I'm looking at you because this is important. Okay, Honorable Atkinson?
Yes, correct, Chair.
Chair, sorry, I've got something here which might provide more clarity as far as the legal cases are concerned. And this is in the High Court of South Africa on the 24th of June in the matter of the Road Accident Fund and the Auditor General, the Accounting Standards Board, and the Minister of Transport. And it's ordered that the application for leave to appeal is dismissed with costs. So it basically ends there.
Thanks, Honorable Atkinson. So let me summarize. I'm just wanting us to catch everyone up to our conversation. So the history of this, as I've been able to see, so there was an initial High Court application that went as a road accident fund. Then there was an application for leave to appeal at the High Court. The High Court refused. Would that be correct? They did not hear it.
Yeah.
The Road Accident Fund then approached the Supreme Court of Appeal. correct? Already, because you used
Yes.
the term reconsideration.
Yes, Chair.
And the reconsideration application is done. You petition the judge president of a court following a decision of that court that the litigant believes was not right.
Correct,
Right?
Chair.
Would that be correct? So I just want to say this. So the High Court considered the issue. You appealed for leave to appeal. They refused. You went to the Supreme Court of Appeal. They've turned you down. Then you are now petitioning the judge president
Yeah,
of the Supreme Court of Appeal to reconsider the matter.
Yes, Chair.
Right. So far, what we know is that the courts have agreed with the AG at this point. That's the record that we have. I'm saying this, Mr. Litswalo, so that it's important that when we speak here in committee, you've used the term social benefit fund.
Yes, Chair.
That's not decided anyway. Is it?
It is, Chair.
By whom?
By the Constitutional Court in LSSA versus the Minister of Transport and others, and recently by the High Court, Antwerpen versus the Road Accident Fund. And this was on the, I just want to get the date. This was on the 29th of July, 2024.
So what I want to say, Mr. Litswalo, is this, again, I will, so what happens in the course of litigation? The courts apply the law to the facts. Quoting an authority in litigation is not the same as a decision in your favor. In other words, what we have on record right now is that you still have not won the case. Have you won it?
Absolutely, Chair, which is why we are asking for reconsideration, because we differ with the views, and the courts have always found to have erred. If you look at some of the cases that we have won them on appeal. In fact, most of our cases were won on appeal when we went on appeal, and that's why we are saying, Chair, it is a matter. You are asking whether there was a consideration of whether we are a social benefit fund, and I said the Court has found out that we are. It is a thing that Justice Museneke did in the LSSA versus the Minister of Transport and others.
So, Mr. Letswalo, the substance of my question is in this matter, have the courts ruled in your favor in this litigation?
No, Chair.
Thank you. That's important to place on the table. You therefore cannot describe this as if it's a settled matter arising out of your litigation. What you have is a view informed by the authorities you are referring to. It's not a specific decision of the court. And this is very important. I'm not fighting with you. I said initially that it's important that we are candid with one another in the course of our... So the way I would frame it is that I would have said to the committee, our view is that this is a social benefit fund, right? To the extent that I'm going to refer it as such, the dispute is ongoing. However, this is currently our view. As we sit here, you are still legally, as far as this dispute is concerned, and in terms of the accounting treatment, you're still regarded as an insurer until this litigation has been completed. Because the issue here is what accounting standard applies. So I'm saying this so that we do not go off at a tangent. The Honorable Sana, I'm going to come to you. I'm getting clarity, seeking questions for now. As I always do, I give the members a chance to ask questions. And I do this every time, Honorable Skosana, where I ask for clarity. And once that is done, I then hand over to the members. So all I'm saying, Mr. Litswalo, is that the litigation continues, right? Even though, right, and my next question is whether you have actually filed your reconsideration and so on. But the point I'm making is that the litigation in substance continues, right? The matter will be settled at some point, either in your favor or in favor of the Auditor General. And therefore, the matter remains undecided. It has to be, because the litigation is ongoing. It is undecided, right?
Yes, Chair, but I think, let me clarify one aspect, Chair, which becomes very, very important. The decision of whether we are a social benefit scheme or not, it's a matter of classification. Classification in South Africa is done by the Public Sector Classifications Committee. The Public Sector Classifications Committee in November 2022 reaffirmed the classification of RAF as a social benefit fund. Now, where do you find this classification, Chair? 1998, South African Reserve Bank.
Honorable members, Mr. Litswalo is on the floor. Please just lower your voices.
South African Reserve Bank, Institutional Sector Classifications Guide, RAF, Social Benefit, Social Security Fund, they call it. FSB, Directive 1, February 2011, fundamentally Social Security Fund. The Prudential Authority, who is our regulator, classifies us as a social benefit fund. In July 2024, the new Institutional Sector Classification Guide of the Reserve Bank, the latest one, RAF, Social Security Fund. So all we are saying, Chair, is we are saying this convinced by those authorities that that's what we are. And all we are saying is that anyone who says we are something else must actually produce that evidence. We are still waiting for it, Chair.
And I'm aware that these matters have been traversed in the same court action you lost. Okay, thank you. All right. So I think I'm hoping we've kind of come to a level of clarity, and I'm looking at the members as to where the dispute is, right? So it has been to the High Court. The High Court has agreed with the Auditor General. Then the RAF petitioned the High Court for leave to appeal. The High Court turned that application down. The matter went to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court of Appeal turned the Road Accident Fund down. The matter is now going to be with the Judge President of the Supreme Court of Appeal to ask the Judge President to reconsider, right? So that the matter is ventilated, because it was dismissed without a hearing. Would that be correct? Thank you. So that's where we are. The reason I'm saying this, Mr. Litswalo, is because I don't want us to try and replicate the court by having an argument here. The matter is now in the court. We will wait for the court outcome. However, this information and this process is important in our future consideration of the AG's position. And that is why I wanted this matter litigated, sort of outlined here, okay? I don't take a position as yet, okay? At least in as far as what the committee therefore needs to do about the outcome. And you are correct, you referred to a information that you sent. I have sent that letter, this is for the committee members, to ask for more information so that as we work on our program, it's an informed process rather than. So that information has been furnished by the Road Accident Fund, and thank you for that. So I wanted to do this because I am going to open the floor to members for their questions on the entirety of the presentation. But because we did not kind of go through this, I wanted to make sure that we are all on the same page. I am just going to ask the AG team, is there anything that is inaccurate that I've said here? I don't want us to mislead the public.
Chairperson, I would also request you note the chair as the accounting authority. I think she's got responses she would like to give.
Okay, no, thank you. Okay, so nothing inaccurate so far. Okay, thank you so much. Chair?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'd just like to add to what the CEO have said. I think one critical aspect around this dispute, this is a technical matter. I think you've summarized it very well. But at the core of this is that there is no appropriate social benefit standard to be applied around the recognition of liability, claims liability in this country. And in that absence, the accounting setting standard from 2004 has been in the process of drafting the same. And I always say that we need a technical solution irrespective of what's going on, with the courts. So the sooner we get the technical standard that is relevant, then this matter would be technically resolved. So I think we need some sort of support in getting the ASB to fast track this process, because it cannot be that it takes more than 20 years in this country to develop an accounting standard. And secondly, there's another aspect in the classification. There's 4 public entities that the South African Reserve Bank have classified as social benefits funds: the URF, the Compensation Fund, and the CCOID, which is the Compensation Commissioner for the Mines, for diseases in the mines. And all these entities are not requested or required to use an insurance standard. Only the RAF, which is a major inconsistency and an anomaly in terms of accounting and applying these standards. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Chair, I'd like to assure you that I do not regard this matter as spurious at all, right? Earlier on, I referred to legislative and other issues, right? So I recognize that. But I want to ask you, Chair, since you dealt with the matter, for clarification again, typically when a standard or similar, so when there's a process that is in play to get to an outcome, there is guidance that is provided as to how entities must, in the meantime, what is the applicable standard in the meantime? Have you received such a guidance from any authority?
Yes, Chair, we have. We started with the very ASB to get guidance from them. And they gave us guidance up to a point where we, as a board, we are sure that we're on the right track. And we also benchmarked with other accounting firms locally and internationally, because it wasn't an easy decision for the board to take at the time. We had to make sure that we follow the GRAP framework, which is the accounting framework in the public sector, and make sure that we also follow the directives that are issued by the ASB, as well as engage with the Office of the Accountant General within National Treasury. So that those discussions ensued up to a point that we were assured that we're following the right direction. But then when we were doing that, then the AG came out of that process. And then we were left with a dilemma because the technical matter hasn't been resolved. And I think that's why the matter ended up in court. So yes, we engage with all of them. And I think we've shared that information for the committee so that they understand what was the due process. Thank you.
So in substance, you are therefore saying the Treasury and the ASB has agreed with your approach? Chair, I'm asking you. So in other words, in this dispute, you've got the support of the National Treasury and you've got the support of the Accounting Standards Board.
When we made the decision at that point in time, they did. But then subsequently, when there was pressure, then, professionals changed their story. But at the time when we're considering changing the accounting policy, in our engagement, they gave us that support.
What is their position right now, Chair?
As I said, they've since changed their position, I must state that.
So they agree with the Auditor General?
Yes.
So let me say once again, I'll say this the last time, colleagues. It is very, I spoke about candor earlier on. we must not frame things in a way that appears to give a certain impression. Because this exchange, Chair, that you and I have just had now, if I had not asked the final question in the matter that I did, the members would have been none the wiser as to what the exact position is, because it gave the impression that Treasury and the ASB have agreed with you. So the reason I've been asking these questions in the manner that I'm doing is that it's not just about our conversation here. The public has to know what the state of affairs now. I have not expressed myself, for instance, on what I think about, the dispute itself, because it's in play. But it's important, Chair, that when we give answers, they are truthful. Please. Thank you. I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions. Honorable Neil May has to leave at 11 for an important personal matter that she's got to attend to. She has spoken to me. I am going to favor her with the first opportunity to ask a question so that she can then leave with us. So please bear with me. I have done the same for other members who had an emergency who have had to attend. So Honorable Neil May, let me ask you to ask some questions. Thank you.
No, good morning, Honourable Deputy Minister and your team present here, the chairperson of the board, and your team that is present here. Good morning, colleagues, and our chairperson here. No, thank you very much for your presentation. And listening to the deliberation that was presented here, my thoughts are that this is the public's money. That is being debated in the sense of how classifications are done, should it be done. And looking at the compliance and the non-compliance, what was the view of the board during all this time with regards to the non-compliance? I'm looking at, we also do research with regards to the standards, the Public Sector Classification Committee. And in all of that, basically, they were saying that, that the PFMA is still our guiding document of government. You have a Minister of Transport that you also need to confer with. Why then are you in opposition to government? If we are one government, surely there should be a deciding factor that government is leading. So the Department of Transport should be leading in this dispute, because the money that is being used legally is the public's money that should rather be paid out to the claimants. And it's making a cottage industry for lawyers. And I love that term that came up when we looked at the medical legal. We have a cottage industry of lawyers. The only people that are benefiting here is the legal fraternity and not the claimants. And at the end of the day, we represent the people of South Africa. And to listen to how that the road accident fund is on its own road and not in unison or in sync with government, with the legislation of government, with the Department of Transport, and taking into account the people of South Africa. And that is where I'm actually putting the ball in the board's court. Where are you on all of this? Why are you then not conferring and guiding? Because at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. The non-compliance, the lack of funds, the corruption, the whatever has happened. If you look at the reports from the SIU and you look at the challenge, since when does a body take the AG to court? I mean, we are all one government, and this is the question that I have in the sense of looking at the presentations and going forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, so what I'll do so that you can go, Honorable Neil May, I will ask the deputy. Sorry, I mean it's up to you, Deputy Minister and Chair, to say who deals with the issues, and then we'll release you, Honorable Neil May.
Chairperson, if I may beg your indulgence, that the board and the executives will field the questions. I will have one or two comments at the end, unless there is a direct question to myself. Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member, for that question. I'm going to answer the question from the board perspective, and then I'll allow the CEO to deal with the specifics. Honourable Chairperson and Member, this matter is currently, up to this stage, as a board, we are very clear that we needed a technical solution. And the dilemma that we're facing now, in fact, we are re-looking at the matter with our new minister and deputy minister. We are currently discussing that, and we're saying the board is not disagreeing with the direction that the minister and the government is taking us, but we're saying there is a technical vacuum in terms of how are we going to account. So we need a technical solution in changing and transitioning in this process, because the standard that we are expected to go back to, it's called IFRS 4, has been discontinued and has been replaced by IFRS 17. IFRS 17 talks to commercial insurers with insurance contracts as well as insurance license, which we don't have those. So we're trying to find a solution to deal with that vacuum in terms of where do we go back to, because there is that just vacuum that we just need direction to take, and then basically we'll be in agreement, because then we still have to account in terms of our liability going forward, in terms of our financial statements. So we are currently dealing with that matter. We understand the pressure and the expectations by the current shareholder. Let me allow the CEO to take the rest.
Over to you, Mr. Luso.
No, thanks very much, Chair. Look, I don't think that we will ever be recalcitrant to the point where we ignore what the shareholder says, or Parliament for that matter. I think one of the most important things in taking care of this kitty is to understand what the ramifications of insurer means. And I think we will share with you, Chair, the letter, the memo of the ASB to its own board on the 22nd, I think, in 2020, I think it's 2021, in September, of what it means. Once you say we are an insurer, it means we must be fully funded. Fully funded means you must then get some 300 billion from somewhere, and that must be understood in that context. The second part is, it is not our intention, it has never been our intention to take the AG to court. It took a long time and various engagement before that happened. And one of the things that we tried to do, the previous minister had asked us to actually engage the AG on these matters. The AG told us that even if she was to agree with us, she's functus officio, meaning she can't change her own decision. It's only the court that can change an AG decision as a Chapter 9 institution. So it must be understood that there were engagements, there were attempts to try and solve these matters outside the court process, but it's only through the court that we'll get that decision. As the chair says, it's a technical matter. For as long as there is no standard for social benefit, that's where we sit and settle with this problem, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Neil May. So you'll be free to leave when you need to. Thank you very much for coming nonetheless. Thank you so much.